So I would like to invite the Honourable Melissa Parke to the stage. Melissa Parke has been the patron of WA Wildlife for 15 years. She's a former federal member for Fremantle and a former Minister for International Development. Prior to entering the Australian Parliament, Melissa served as an international lawyer with the United Nations in Kosovo, Gaza, New York, and Lebanon. After her retirement from Parliament, Melissa served for 4 years as an eminent expert on Yemen for the UN Human Rights Council. Melissa is currently a Director of Animals Australia, the Chair of the WA Museum Board of Trustees, and a board member of the world's largest NGO, BRAC, based in Bangladesh, which takes a holistic approach to poverty alleviation.
Kaya, everyone. That means hello in the local Noongar language. Hello, friends. Now, you all heard from my sister Georgina this morning. She's pretty unforgettable. But I'm sorry to tell you that I'm the boring sister. I don't have a big laugh, and I don't even have any pictures for you. But we do come from the same place of absolute love for wildlife and for all of nature. I acknowledge that we're meeting on the land of the Whadjuk Noongar people, and we pay our very deep respects to their elders past and present and to other First Nations people who may be here today. We acknowledge their gentle stewardship of this land for tens of thousands of years. As was said by former Young Australian of the Year and former Afghan refugee Akram Azimi, we make this acknowledgement not out of a sense of protocol, but out of recognition that the dreaming has not ended and we're all a part of it. I'm convinced that most of the problems facing the world today, pandemics, climate change, mass extinctions, nuclear weapons, mental health crises, even war, stem from humanity's disconnection, our separation from nature and from each other, from forgetting that we on this planet are all ultimately connected. Indigenous peoples of the world have always understood the connection between all things, people, animals, and all of nature, and that there is a natural balance that must be respected. Unfortunately, that balance is seriously out of whack. We're all seeing the impact of dangerous global warming on the Earth. We're seeing it play out on the nightly news as people in Europe and now Hawaii are fleeing raging fires and succumbing to extreme temperatures. We've had our fair share in Australia of extreme weather events too that have been catastrophic for wildlife and humans. There's been some belated recognition by governments around the world of the need for action on climate change, although not nearly enough is being done to address humanity's dependence on fossil fuels. At least there is now a growing international attention on the climate issue. The problem is that there are two other existential threats to life on Earth that governments are doing little about and that most people are not aware of on a day-to-day basis. The first is that of mass extinction of species. The 2019 Global Assessment Report on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, published by the United Nations, found that out of around 8 million species of plants and animals, roughly 1 million species face extinction within decades as a result of human actions. The report showed a planet in which the human footprint is so large it leaves little space for anything else. 3/4 of all land has been turned into farms or covered by concrete. 3/4 of lakes and rivers are used for crop or livestock cultivation. Oceans are no longer a sanctuary. Industrial fishing takes place on more than half the world's oceans, leaving 1/3 of fish populations overexploited. Then there is marine pollution, fish farms, shipping routes, subsea mines, etc. Did you know that radioactive wastewater from Fukushima's broken nuclear power plant is planned to be discharged into the ocean in the near future with unknown consequences? The UK and France have been discharging their radioactive wastewater from nuclear power plants into the northern seas for decades. There are no international regulations to stop this kind of pollution. In terms of habitats, the deepest loss is of wetlands, which have been drained by 83% since 1700, with a knock-on impact on water quality and wildlife, bird life in particular. Forests are diminishing and monocultural plantations have replaced biodiverse jungle and woodland. As a result, more than 500,000 species have insufficient habitats for long-term survival. Many are on course to disappear within decades. The Worldwide Fund for Nature's 2020 Living Planet report found that wildlife populations had declined by around 70% since 1970 as a result of overconsumption, population growth, and intensive farming. The 2021 Economics of Biodiversity Review, published by the UK government, asserted that biodiversity is declining faster than any time in human history. A December 2022 study published in Science Advances stated that the planet has entered the sixth mass extinction and warns that the current anthropogenic trends, particularly climate and land use changes, could result in the loss of more than a tenth of plant and animal species by the end of the century. Just to repeat, we are now experiencing the Earth's sixth mass extinction of plant and animal species, but this is the first extinction caused by humans. What's more, the UN says that humanity is putting itself at risk of extinction by increasingly rapid destruction of the systems that support life on Earth. David Attenborough points out in his book, A Life on This Planet, that there are 9 planetary boundaries within which the Earth must stay to avoid catastrophe. Climate is only one of them. Another of them is loss of biodiversity, and that boundary has been well and truly breached. Human society is in jeopardy from the accelerating decline of the Earth's natural life support systems. This conclusion is backed up by the work of ecologist Simon Mustoe. In his important book, Wildlife in the Balance, he explains the critical role that every animal, from the smallest insect to the largest blue whale, plays in regulating the ecosystem. The point is that without wildlife, humans can't exist either. So rapid species extinction is an existential issue, not only for animals and plants themselves, but also for humanity, and it has to be addressed as an urgent priority. Here in Australia, we have a particular duty, since our mammals come from the oldest known groups alive. As we know, birdsong evolved on this continent. 80% of Australia's animals are found nowhere else. Of course, our native animals depend on our native habitat. And as Georgina mentioned this morning, here in WA, we're blessed to live in a global biodiversity hotspot. For comparison, in the UK and Ireland, there are 4,000 native flora species, while in Australia, there are 24,000, of which 16,000 are here in Western Australia. Having so much biodiversity in Australia means we have more to lose than just about anywhere else on the planet. This makes it all the more important that we preserve what biodiversity we still have and that we embark on a process of rewilding the earth and the oceans. In the words of John Davis from the Rewilding Institute, rewilding, in essence, is giving the land back to wildlife and wildlife back to the land. Aside from species extinction and climate change, there is another existential threat that doesn't get spoken about much except in the context of the war in Ukraine, but is of the utmost importance to all life on this planet: nuclear weapons. You may think that's an odd topic to talk about here today, but it's a matter of concern to all life. Nuclear weapons today are much more powerful than the atomic bombs that killed more than 200,000 people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II. Even a so-called limited nuclear war would kill millions of people in the initial blast and firestorm, and millions more over the next 6 months from radioactive fallout. Then there would be the radioactive contamination of the earth, water and air that would have consequences for generations, as we've seen from places like Chernobyl and Fukushima. But of course, it is not just people who die in a nuclear war. All living things will suffer catastrophic harm from nuclear weapons. The effects of nuclear weapons are not just in the region where the bombs are exploded. Scientists now know that even a small-scale nuclear war, say between India and Pakistan, would cause large amounts of soot to be blasted into the stratosphere where it could not be rained out. The soot would spread around the globe, prevent sunlight penetrating to the earth. The resulting nuclear winter would cause massive crop failure and famine and the likely death of at least a third of humanity and other life. A major nuclear war, say between the US and Russia, would likely end all complex life on Earth. After World War II, Albert Einstein and some of the scientists involved in creating the atomic bombs dropped on Japan established what they called the doomsday clock, which shows how close humanity is to global catastrophe, which is represented by midnight. Back then, the clock was set to 7 minutes to midnight. Each year, eminent scientists set the clock to indicate the risk to the Earth. This year, the doomsday clock shows that we are the closest we've ever been to Armageddon, set at 90 seconds to midnight, based on the twin existential threats of nuclear weapons and climate change. While you could say that climate change is eroding our chances every day, nuclear weapons can end them in an instant. And nuclear weapons are unlike other weapons in the scale and the longevity of the humanitarian and environmental consequences they cause. That is why they've been prohibited in the new UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. But nuclear weapons are like other weapons in the sense that if they exist, at some point they will be used. The fact that there's not been a major nuclear weapon disaster since World War II is due to dumb luck rather than good management. There have been many accidents, false alarms, and near misses involving nuclear weapons over the decades, most of which have been kept secret from the public. I strongly believe that all of us who care about the environment must care about nuclear weapons. Their very existence is a moral injury, and the people, plants, and animals we love are being held hostage every day by those countries that have nuclear weapons. The fact these weapons exist means one day they will be used, whether by accident or design, by an unhinged leader, a terrorist group, a cyber attack, or a simple mistake. Any use of nuclear weapons would be catastrophic, which is why last month the UN Secretary General issued his new agenda for peace, which has as its #1 recommendation the elimination of nuclear weapons. This week, more than 100 medical journals, including The Lancet and the Medical Journal of Australia, put out a joint call for urgent action to eliminate nuclear weapons. They noted that even a limited nuclear war involving only 250 of the 13,000 nuclear weapons in the world would kill 120 million people outright and cause global climate disruption, leading to a nuclear famine, putting 2 billion people at risk. They identified the elimination of nuclear weapons as a public health priority. Elimination of nuclear weapons is also an environmental priority. Research this year by Japanese academic Kunio Kaiho from the Department of Earth Science at Tohoku University looked at the causes of animal species loss and identified conservation priorities. He concluded that the conservation priority for animal species must be 1, prevent nuclear war, 2, reduce deforestation rates, 3, decrease pollution, and 4, limit global warming, in that order. This research highlights the fact that while every species will be harmed by a nuclear war, only one species can stop it. The most important thing we can do as Australians right now to deal with this particular existential threat to ourselves and the people and animals we love is to write to our federal member of parliament and urge the Australian government to sign the new UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. And this is what the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, or ICAN, is urging the Australian government to do. ICAN was actually started in Australia by a small group of people, many doctors, sitting around a kitchen table in Melbourne in 2007. 10 years later, in 2017, ICAN won the Nobel Peace Prize for their work in highlighting the humanitarian and environmental consequences of nuclear weapons, and for their work in getting the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons adopted at the UN. I really believe the peace and environment movements need to come together, to work together on our joint mission to make the world a safer, cleaner and kinder place for all. Another thing we can do for animals, the climate and global water supplies and our own health is to adopt a plant-based diet. The UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change issued a report a few years ago saying that reducing meat consumption is one of the most important things we can do as individuals to help the planet. Animals Australia has an absolutely fantastic veg kit available for free on its website. Clearly, we need to continue to look after our natural ecosystems and existing wildlife and try to preserve and enlarge their habitat, including expanding and linking wilderness areas, national parks and other protected areas, removing invasive pests, challenging inappropriate land developments, ensuring there are wildlife corridors and making our infrastructure permeable to wildlife movement, for example, by installing safe wildlife crossings on major roads. Also talking to our local councils to see if they have wildlife land management and emergency plans in place. Let us follow the example of our Aboriginal brothers and sisters and embrace our interconnectedness with nature and each other. We are not separate from nature, but a part of it. That's why it feels so good to go for a walk in a forest or swim in the sea or cuddle a joey. As David Attenborough observed, nature provides our air, our food and our water, and is the most precious thing we have, and we need to defend it. Looking after nature is looking after ourselves. Another way of looking ourselves is to do a daily 3-minute heart-brain coherence exercise, which has a healing effect on the whole body. Has anybody ever heard of that? No, okay. Well, I might just get you to do that right now. It's very short. And if you want to learn more about it, there's an organisation called the Heart Math Institute, which has done a lot of research in this area, and it shows the incredible healing effects on the body of doing this exercise and being heart-centered. So basically, everyone close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths in and out. So count for 4 on the way in and out, and 6 on the way out. Focus on your heart as you're breathing. Still focused on your heart, think about an animal or animals that make you smile. Think about them in your heart. And feel gratitude for having them in your life, for them letting you love them and for you getting the opportunity to love them. Feel gratitude for all the people in this room and all the people watching this conference online, for all the work they do in helping animals. And send that feeling of love and appreciation out from your heart. Send it out to the whole world in the form of light. All pain and suffering transmuted being into love and light. And then bring that light back into your heart. Feel it flowing back in. And when you're ready, open your eyes. If you can do that, or just a simplified version of thinking about person or animal you love that makes you smile, and just do that while focusing on your heart, just for 3 minutes every day, it will have amazing benefits. There can be a tendency for people who care about the planet, and I know that all of you here do, to become despondent about the state of the world. And I've felt this way many times myself. But as the American activist for civil and children's rights, Marian Wright Edelman, said, "It is so important not to become apathetic or cynical, by telling ourselves that nothing works or makes a difference. Every day, light your small candle. We all, in each of us in our own way, can light our own small candle. Every animal saved, every animal loved makes a difference. As Georgina mentioned this morning, the successful initiative taken by her and other community members from Gondwana, Link and Wilson Inlet Catchment Group this year to raise $500,000 to buy the Eugenup wetlands down near Albany from a private landowner to keep the wetlands safe in community hands is an extraordinary example of the power of caring people working together to achieve an outcome for endangered species like the Australasian bittern and others. The same can be said for ICANN's work to abolish nuclear weapons. From little things, big things grow. When we work together with like-minded people on a worthy cause, we have the power to achieve amazing outcomes. Anthropologist Margaret Mead said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." And let me end with the words of another inspiring woman, Australia's Sarah Henderson, who said, "Don't wait for a light to appear at the end of the tunnel. Stride down there and light the bloody thing yourself." Thank you.
Just checking that's on. Look, Melissa, can we just give Melissa another big round of applause, please, everybody? There's a reason we wanted Melissa to speak at the end, because we wanted to take, I suppose, this conference to a macro level. We've talked a lot about this conference, everything at a micro level, individual animal care, which is what we all firmly believe in. But I think, if we're going to go forward and rebuild communities, we really need to start thinking about the whole world when we're implementing our small things. And I always say Melissa is one of the most intelligent and articulate people I've ever met. And just thank you for everything you've done. And for those of you that don't know, Melissa's also been working quite a lot in WA to improve welfare outcomes for wildlife post-emergency. So she's been liaising with a lot of the not-for-profits to ensure we've actually got a voice with government, and obviously, using her expertise and her prior experience to help us navigate some of that red tape and those hurdles. So thank you for that as well, Melissa. I appreciate it. So I didn't want to say anything earlier because I don't know what Melissa can say or not say. Some of you may have seen her on the ABC earlier this week, but yeah, Melissa might just give a bit of a heads up about why nuclear weapons has been so important to her heart in this talk as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, just to give you a little anecdote, when I was based in Gaza with the UN Refugee Agency, I attended a Hiroshima Day commemoration, like 21 years ago, 22 years ago, just a few days ago, it was the anniversary. And there were hundreds of Palestinian children down at the Gaza harbour. And they had made little paper boats with candles in them. And then they lit the candles and put the boats on the water in the harbour. And it was such a beautiful, incredibly moving sight. All these little paper boats, but also these children who were themselves being subjected to bombing on a regular basis, who were remembering children in another time and place who'd been bombed. And so that's always stayed with me. And so just recently, I was offered and I accepted a role to lead the global movement to abolish nuclear weapons called it's ICANN. I mentioned ICANN. So there was a reason I was talking about nuclear weapons, but I do think it's relevant. I think because all life is endangered by them is something for us to bear in mind as well. And I think the causes of the environment movement and the peace movement do need to come together. So anyway, I'm continuing my role as the patron of WA wildlife because they won't let me leave, frankly. Even if I have to do it remotely from Geneva. So anyway. Now, I'm really sorry that I'm nowhere near as entertaining as my sister, and I have a tendency to talk about dark things. But I do think there is a hope. There is also hope. There's horror, but there's also hope and humanity, and together we can solve all of these issues by working together. Yep. So thank you. Bye.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Right, thank you very much to everybody who's attended and the people who've zoomed in from wherever they happen to be in the world. So thank you very much. We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have here. It's been a very nice atmosphere. We've all connected, hopefully made some new friends, some new connections, and learnt heaps while we've been here. You can never learn too much. We learn every day. There's lots of things that go on and around in this place that is really important, that we use our people power, human resilience. Sometimes it sounded very depressing, but humans have some amazing spirits and we draw from what's around us. So if we all remain positive, we can do some more positive actions, hopefully in more than just one field. So I'm just in memories, the people can't be with us. And our next award is an inaugural award for Dr. Jim Pollock. So we have all put our little QR codes in, modern technology. And the winner is awarded to Louise Bonomi from Animals Australia. So Louise is not with us at the moment, but we will be sending out her award to her. And before we sort of wind up the rest of it, a note here, New South Wales group photo request. If you can go up to the right and meet outside the glass windows, they'd like to take a photo of you. And the importance of collecting all your gear before we all go. And I would really like to say, while you're all thinking that and eating your lunch, thanks for the food, but I think we ought to give a really big round of applause for Dean, who's also been doing so much in the background there and presenting up here as well. So thanks to all the teams and especially you to make this a worthwhile event. That without you, we wouldn't be existing, because you're the ones that are asking for these things to happen more and more often. So thank you to yourselves. Now the buses will be departing at 1:30, and we've missed them. So you actually have to meet in the forecourt outside the Adina apartment. So that's going down the stairs and out through the doors and just waiting where that taxi rank is, and the buses will be picking you up there. So without further ado, now you've got 2 years planning here to happen now. You can start arranging for your finances, your talks, your inspirations, your stories, whatever else you'd like to gather for our next conference, which will be held in, where? Who's next? So hopefully we'll be showing us very shortly where we will be coming to. Okay. Right. Thank you for all attending. Enjoy the rest of your lunch. We'll see you downstairs. We'll see you, plus others. Hopefully you've gathered in your arms and shared the journey along the way for rehabilitation, care of the environment, caring for yourselves and for a better world. And we're always onwards and upwards. So with that, I'd like to say thank you, and we'll close the conference. Just share everything. Okay.